What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about life today and the energy of life. Depending on your belief system, on your religious background, however you want to define the beginning of life, once it starts, regardless of your definition, it is inevitable for it to be. It's impossible for us to stop it. When a woman becomes pregnant, for example, it's inevitable for it to stop, unless, of course, we go and do something with it. Same goes for death. Once the process starts, as you already know, it's inevitable for it to stop. It's there, and even though we try, we cannot stop it. So life and death, the energy of them, they're both part of it, and they both complement each other. Now today, let's look at why that is at an energetic level, at an atomic quanta level, as if you want to call it that way. The reason we do that is because once we shift our perception and by looking at our lives and everybody else's lives and this world from that perspective, many things will make sense, and it would also put us in a better position as to make better decisions for our lives, as well as everything else that is going on. Because once we help shift our perception from the point of view of life, everything have different meanings, I should say. And it is a much more empowered position to be in as a human being. Before we start, I just want to mention that I noticed that my viewers are in 3 different categories. One category is mainly interested in the soundtrack that I compose. If you're one of them, then obviously this video is not for you. Go ahead and watch the playlist, because I put all my soundtracks with their introduction in the playlist folder, so it'll be easier for you to look at it. The next soundtrack, I'm still experimenting because I'm doing something a little bit different, so it's on its way, but it's not finished yet. So that's one group. Another group is those of you who are here just for the content of this, for example, this video. Obviously, you're more than welcome to be here as well, but then I don't have a specific playlist for you guys. It's just the videos that I get. And then the third group are the ones who are interested in both. So I just wanted to put this out there, so if you're interested in just the soundtrack, then go ahead and look at the playlist, because not all my content is just about the soundtrack. Soundtracks is one of them, and so that's why they are more categorized there, so it makes it easier for you to find if you're not interested in the rest of the content. So going back to the topic that we want to talk about in terms of life, when you look at each cell, each atom, each light quanta, as Einstein put it, at that level, you will, after a while, once you either do your own research, but also read everybody else's research paper, you notice that it's mainly about the exchange of communication. The exchange of communication is among the cells, is among the atoms, is among the electrons. And they all communicate, if you think about it, I call it wirelessly. It is as if they have their own cell phones and they talk to each other like you and I do, and they text each other, but they do it at their level without any particular cell phone, because they are exchanging information. They're texting basically each other at a wave level. It's wireless, it's wave, because a lot of them, they don't necessarily connect to each other at a physical level. Even though they are far apart, they can communicate with each other. The reason we know of this communication is because people like me who do research, but also many other brilliant scientists over the past decades or so, have done a lot of amazing research and looked at the ramification, the results, the data that they have collected, all of which are geared towards our understanding of the communication exchange among these atoms, cells, electrons, quanta, whatever it is that we're studying. The reason we know that the communication happens is because there's always a result, there's always an action and reaction that is happening among these cells. For example, the act of breathing that we all take for granted, once you start studying the act of breathing, you will very quickly see and notice that it's basically the whole journey of the air into the lungs and all those good stuff. It's all about an exchange of communication between the oxygen, electrons, and then for them to be moved into each and every one of cell that we have in our bodies, etc. It's an amazing and fascinating journey, by the way. If you're interested, I highly recommend you reading about it, because it puts a lot of things in perspective, in my opinion, when we look at human being at that level. So within this exchange of information, exchange of knowledge, exchange of communication, that is again wirelessly within our bodies, but also without our bodies, outside, all of that is happening without our knowledge. So it begs the question, how did they actually know? How did these all cells and everything knew? And again, depending on your belief system and on your background, you may call it God, you may call it the universe, you may call it existence. It doesn't really matter. The truth of the matter is that it's there, and they all know, and they all innately know what to say, what to do, how to communicate with each other, and what language it is that they are talking to each other. And that language, in its essence, is at a wave level. We call it frequency, you can call it energy. But nonetheless, all these data, all this information, if you think about it, it's being transported through these wave/particles of electrons that are exchanging everything at a wireless level. And that we call life. When life ends, one of the main reasons at a physical level that we can tell that something or somebody is dead, it's lack of movement. There is no movement anymore. That person cannot move. The same goes when it comes, for example, to brain frequencies or the frequencies of the organs. We can tell that something or someone is dead when there are no brain frequencies. And brain frequencies are waves. Waves, there are electrical impulses, which goes back to the electrons, which goes back to the quanta that we've talked about. So if you think of it that way, it all makes sense from a life versus death perspective, because it has everything to do with communication at that level and the or the lack of communication of it once death occurs. And so tie that all back in to the topic of today's discussion is the inevitability, if that's a word, I'm not sure, of life. The fact that life is inevitable. Same goes again for death, because whether we want to even control it or not, the communication happens all the time. And the communication of these electrons, of this electromagnetic field around us, with each other and within ourselves, is inevitable, because the exchange of communication is inevitable. Whether we want to control it or not, they are still talking to each other. They still know of one another. And so that's why there's little we can do for this exchange of communication to happen because its ramification is the perception of each human being. So if you think about it, we can sit somewhere, we're not even paying any attention to anything or anybody, but our cells and our electrons are still at that communicative level because it's their job to live. It's their job to be life itself. They cannot stop. So going back to it being inevitable, if you think about the communication being there all the time, you can bet your ass on the perception for it to be also built on all the time. And so for that reason, our level of awareness of what we just talked about right now, and our level of awareness of this communication that happens at that energetic level at all times, whether we choose it for it to be or not, the level of awareness around it is what makes all the difference in a person's life for him or her to be content, to have zest for life, to be aware, to make sound decisions, and to be a human being as he or she is supposed to be. So however we choose to work on our perception, work on our lives, work on our existence, it is directly correlated with the way in which we understand ourselves, the way we see ourselves, and the way we are aware of this communication that is happening at all times. So what I'm trying to say is that regardless whether we think about it or not, consciously or not, it is there. So we might as well be conscious about it, because life and death, they're all part of our existence at every single moment of our lives, even right now as we speak. And it can make a huge difference for a person to choose to expand his or her mind, to challenge his or her mind, to question his or her mind in life. Because once we start becoming comfortable in challenging our mindset, we will be much better equipped to deal with life, or to live for that matter. And the reason I wanted to talk about this topic is because the topic of death is coming up a lot lately, and everything is just so volatile around it. And it mainly is because most of us choose not to be aware of this fact of life that we just talked about. But once we choose to become aware of it, once we choose to expand and challenge our mindset, then all of these topics, they become more of a learning experience, more of a life experience than anything else. So as a result, the upset will not be there. The emotional turmoil will not be there. The ramification of it, which sometimes are bad decisions that we're making, or destructive decisions, I should say, in our lives, will not be there. And unfortunately, most of us are not aware of it, and because of that, we want to make destructive decisions in our lives, but also in everybody else's life. That's why everything becomes so very dramatic and emotional in our lives. So if you find yourself lately being extremely run by all these turmoil and emotions that are going on in our lives, especially in 2020, think about it. If we challenge our thinking a little bit, based on what we just talked about, and look at life and death at that level, at the communication and at a quantum, light quanta level, as Einstein put it, then this emotional roller coaster will no longer be, because we are looking at it at an eagle eye view, because we will understand and know that all of this is part of life. All of this is part of that electrical communication, the wireless communication that happens in an inevitable life that we have. And the more of us who challenge ourselves to live this way and to think this way, the better we are off, because we will also knowingly or unknowingly start communicating this at this energetic level with the people around us. And that is when we start influencing the rest of the world, because in my opinion, there's already too much destruction in this world, and we pay way too much attention to those destructiveness, if that's a word, as opposed to for us to gear and shift our perception and shift our attention towards the constructive ones, because there is already a lot of it in the nature and in our lives as well. So I urge each and every one of you to please think about it, challenge your mind a little bit, because this channel is all about that. This channel is for us to bring up topics that are of interest to us, and to challenge ourselves, to challenge the mindset and our perception for that matter. Because once we start doing that, and once we start becoming comfortable in that, then our lives will be much easier, because we're not as rigid of a frequency as we were before. We're able to expand everything and look at it at a more of an eagle eye view, which then will help us actually create better lives for ourselves and everybody else. So I hope this was helpful to you guys. If it is, feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment if you like. I definitely appreciate all your support. Thanks. Bye.